Those of you who are old enough to remember the old Paladin Have Gun Will Travel thing, that's where I get the idea. So we're taking our lesson from Numbers 6, 22 through 27, also known as the priestly blessing. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, Thus you shall bless the people of Israel. You shall say to them, The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. So shall they put my name upon the people of Israel, and I will bless them." We want to talk today about the idea of your travels with God and what's required to maintain that, the promises God makes to us. What happened back then, what we want to do today. I want to start off with something interesting I found when I started looking into this. This is a Google map of modern-day Israel and surrounding areas. And I've got highlighted here a place called Ketef Hinnom. This was an archaeological site that was dug out, and they found something very interesting in 1979, where they've been doing a lot of digging right around the old city of Jerusalem. It looks kind of like this, where they were. And they found this, an odd-looking little item, just a tiny, tiny thing. And what they realized was this was rolled up. And it was a rolled-up little scroll, and it was made out of silver. After a certain amount of time, when they got the right technology in place to be able to carefully unroll it, they found it looked like this. 2 messages, the ancient script on them. And they found that it said, "May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh cause his face to shine upon you and grant you peace." Sound familiar? This is dated to something like 700 years BC. And it's basically the oldest physical evidence we have relating to scriptures. This is older than the Dead Sea Scrolls. What they used to do was they would have like these little verses like rolled up. It would have an opening in it. You could actually put a cord through it and wear it around your neck. They found some of these at burial sites, actually. I'm assuming that some of the ancient Jews would have put that in when someone was buried. And I thought this was kind of fascinating, not only from an archaeological standpoint, but it gives you a little view into Jewish culture as well. So the point of this, of what this says here, is it's a benediction. So a benediction is something very often you'd use like at the end of a service. You've often heard us do it here. It asks God for divine blessing, for his guidance, and for his peace. This is the kind of thing that very often the high priest would do after he's come out of the Holy of Holies. He's offered the sacrifice and prayed for the people, and he would come out and issue what we would call the priestly blessing. That's what this is very often referred to as. There's a couple of different tenses used here, or moods. One is Jussive, which is sort of a wish or a strong desire or something you really hope for, as opposed to imperative, which is a command. This is how it is. So watch how both of these are used in these verses. We start off at the beginning in the imperative. It says, "The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, Thus you shall bless the people of Israel. You shall say to them, I am God." And by the way, when you see Lord in all capitals like this, it's usually presented in a slightly different version in a printed Bible. It looks a little funny. It looks like capitals, but yet not quite like a regular capital. That's what you call small caps. And where you see that, in fact, the Hebrew, what you should see is Yahweh, the name of God. It was just a tradition that came up over time of not wanting to write God's actual name in there, so they would write Lord instead. So what he's saying is, the I Am is speaking. I'm telling you what you're going to do. We're going to bless the people. Here's how you're going to do it. Then we switch to Jussive. When we ask the Lord bless you and keep you, the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you, the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Now, he's saying, this is what you will ask me for. This is what you're hoping for. This is what you need. This is what you're coming to me for, to pray for. And this is how you'll say it. Now we're back to imperative again. "So shall they put my name upon the people of Israel, and I will bless them." Here's how it's going to be. Here's what I'm going to do. So you see, the roles are very clearly set out here. Who's in charge and who isn't? Who has the power to bless and protect the people, and who are the ones that need it? So the positions are very clearly set at this point. So what are we talking about here? Blessing. The blessing talks about a special relationship with God. What are you looking for? You're looking for help, guidance, and protection for God's people. They were getting ready to go on a journey. This would be the exilic generation. They come out of Egypt. They're getting ready to make the trek to the promised land. This is the point of the blessing. Sort of like maybe sort of an expanded version of what we talk about when we pray for traveling mercies for someone. Say maybe they're on their way here and they're not here yet, and the weather's bad, and maybe they're running late, whatever. You pray for traveling mercy. Well, this was quite a big trip, so this was quite an expansive blessing. This part of it is sort of the umbrella that covers the rest of the blessing. This is the general thing that they're looking for. It indicates that they feel that that they have this relationship with God. God is saying, you can request this blessing from me because I've designated you as my people. Not just anybody gets to do this, but you can. You're going to need my help. You're going to need my guidance, and you're okay to ask me for that, and I'll provide it. Now you notice it says blessing and then keeping. It's not like, okay, you're blessed, bam, I'm done with you, I can go on to other things. Because like wandering sheep, it's very easy for them to get into trouble. They need to be constantly watched over for their own safety. So not only repair, but maintenance, ongoing afterward, right? God's covenant, God's contract is an ongoing thing. Doesn't leave you hanging, doesn't drop you at some point and say, well, if you mess up, too bad, I took care of you, but that's it now. It's going to stay with them. So there's this keeping speaks of security. Making his face shine. I love this expression, and the best example I could find of that, and what it reminds me of too, is the beaming face of a parent delighting in their children. Now, I don't have any children, but even I can understand this. I know, as a former child myself, and my wife might say sometimes a current one, depending on how I'm behaving on a given day. This is sort of that, when you look down at your kid and you go, that's my boy, that's my girl. Even, it's the kind of thing you can just see it, and it's that feeling, and when mom or dad looks at you and go, oh, you did, so you're such a good boy. Being gracious. God being gracious is imparting his favor. It's a continued, again, here's that maintenance idea, continued, admittedly undeserved grace and mercy. Why? Because as the sheep go wandering around, stumbling about, getting lost, making all kinds of mistakes, he's still there. God's mercies are new every day. Continued grace, continued mercy, because without it, it'd be game over right from the start, right? So again, that ongoing relationship with God, that ongoing care, that ongoing grace and mercy. Lifting his countenance. This is one of the more interesting aspects of this, I think. When you talk about the upturned face as opposed to the downcast face. He looks upon his people with a very special interest, a very special attitude of care. You think about approval and disapproval and interest and disinterest. When you're really interested in something or someone, oh yeah, wow, look at that, wow. And when you're not, it's, yeah, whatever. So the lifted countenance, yeah, let me get a close look. What are you doing over there? I'm interested in you. And he's interested in each individual of his people. He lifts his countenance to his people. Finally, giving peace. Peace is that wholeness, that complete well-being, that sense of rest and calmness that only the peace of God can bring. There is no other comfort, there is no other peace such as the peace of God. Settling Really, the only real question there is in our lives, everything else is just details. The real question of our lives is, what's our eternal destination? This is a short time here. No matter how we handle this, it's going to be over with before long. And after that, it's going to go on forever. Man, you want to be going to the right place. That's the peace of God. That's the real peace of God. Settling that, that's everything. Now you notice he wraps this up by saying, I will bless them. Automatically, whenever you hear God say, I will do something, you have your 100% guarantee. Now, there are times when a promise will be conditional, and he'll say, if you do this, I will absolutely do that. Sometimes he just says, I'm doing it, regardless of what you do. Speaking of that continued grace and mercy, right? Regardless of what we do, if that was conditional, oh boy. So nothing is more reliable, more certain than the promises of God. It's the only thing that's absolutely certain in life, right? Everything else has a little wiggle room to it. You can't always be, no matter how good someone is, no matter how reliable someone is with something, it's like, there was a guy one time, I used to work at Boston College, and I was standing on the college side looking across the street. Commonwealth Avenue is a very busy street, all kinds of traffic going by. And there was a guy who lived across the street, and every so often, I'd see him come out, and he had these, some kind of spaniel dogs. Never had him on a leash, which makes me crazy to begin with. But anyway, he'd get to the bottom of the steps right at the edge of the road, and the dogs would stop there and wait for them. And he would do everything by 2 claps. It would be clap would mean go or mean stop. Or they recognized that, and they'd get down, they'd stop, and they'd sit. And when the traffic wasn't there, he'd clap again, and they'd go scooting across the street, and then he'd get and stop them again. It would work. I don't know how many times I saw him do that. And then one day he did that, and one of the dogs shot right out into the street, and the car almost hit him. He'd been doing that for years. And that one day, the dog decided to be a dog. And he just shot out and nearly got killed. He just narrowly avoided it. No matter how well-trained that dog was, he's never going to be 100% reliable. But no matter how we mess up, God is always 100% reliable. All right, that's what I wanted to hear. Nothing is more reliable than God's promises. He says he's going to put his name on his people. These people are mine. They belong to me. I take responsibility for them. I'll take care of them. I'm interested in what they're doing. I'm watching them, and I'm going to take care of them. They're mine. They've got my little label right on them. No one else gets them because they're mine. So what we have here is not just a nice little prayer, not just something that's okay, that's a blessing. Great, we're glad to have that. This is like a patriarchal blessing. This is like a Jacob and Esau kind of thing. It's official, and it's basically irrevocable. That was the whole problem, right? The wrong brother gets the blessing. Well, Dad says, I can't do anything about it now. It's been given. It's not something I can just say to you what I said to him. That was an official thing. It's a done deal. So this is a patriarchal blessing from God himself. Pretty exciting. Now, another observation about this. Some folks see a Trinitarian link here, including some respected commentators. So I figured it was worth mentioning today. They'll say, God's name is mentioned 3 times, and there's the peace of God ultimately comes from Jesus. So they're trying to pull the 2 things together. I read some of that over. I'm like, I don't know. We see plenty of connection between the Old Testament and the New all the time. Sometimes the New Testament will quote the Old Testament. Sometimes you can see the Old Testament predict something that's going to happen, and you see it in the New Testament. I mean, ultimately, it's all one book. It's all the story of Jesus anyway. But I personally kind of feel that this is one of those cases where we're trying to pull the new into the old, and it doesn't really say that. I mean, that concept would have meant nothing to the people at the time. The incarnation wasn't to happen for a long time yet. But if you happen to see that way, I mean, hey, it's all good. I mean, the whole Bible is the story of Jesus. And I don't have a problem, certainly, with someone who sees it that way. I'm just saying personally, I don't, but have a look for yourself and think about it, see what you think. Let me know. Be worth a little discussion. Here's another promise from Exodus. It says, I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt. So we're already good. I'm getting you out of there. Where? I'm not just getting you out, which would be good enough, but it says to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hittites, and the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. Well, this is sounding pretty good. I promise, it's from God, which means it'll happen, and a land flowing with milk and honey. It's going to be awesome. Great. So now these folks are getting ready to travel. They're all hooked up. They've got everything they need. They've got Numbers 6:24-26. They've got Exodus 3:17. I don't know what more they could need for a promise. I'm going to be with you all the way, and when you get there, it's going to be awesome. I would think they'd be running, not walking. So off they went. Said, yep, let's head out to the promised land. Here we go. And they get there, almost ready to go in and take possession of the land. They send a few folks in to check it out. And they go, wow, this really is awesome. It's just like you said it would be. This is a great place. But there's some problems. There's some big nasty-looking guys in there, and I don't think we can take them. That's where things went wrong, right? Do you think God would send you there without having any idea of what to do when you got there? Again, that's like saying, God's going to drop me off and go, see ya, I have other things to do, you're on your own. Of course not. But they got nervous, and they got fearful, and they got excited. And next thing you know, the only two, Joshua and Caleb, the only two that wanted to go, the rest of the guys are saying, you're crazy, we're not going, let's stone them. And then God steps in and says, well, really, I guess you folks haven't been listening. This promised land that you thought you'd be going to, well, you won't be. Your whole generation's not going to see it. You're going to wander around until you die. It actually could have been worse. He was ready to kill him on the spot, right? Responded to Moses' prayer to intercede for, please don't wipe them out. It's like, okay, fine, but they're not getting in. Those two will, no one else will. It'll be the next generation that actually gets to see the promised land. So what blocked the blessing? Very simple. Their own fear. Nobody else's. They were afraid. If you're truly trusting in God, what are you afraid of? Their own weak faith. Do you believe what God says or don't you? This is something I wonder all the time. I talk to people about faith and in general and Christianity in particular, and I hear a lot of things that sound good, but I wonder sometimes, you say that, but is it real to you? Does it really mean anything to you? And you'll see a circumstance come up. Apparently it didn't mean anything to you at all, because as soon as things got the least little difficult, you fold like a card table. Their own lack of trust. If you really believe God, you will trust Him to handle things. If you don't, it's going to make your life so much more difficult. Their own disobedience. What did God say? You're starting here, I want you to go there. When you get there, move on in, take over, everything will be fine. Did they do that? No, they said, we're not doing that. I don't know who they thought God was, that they just wanted to say, well, we're not doing it. And there are more promises that we want to be mindful of as we think about this in our own lives too. Look at Isaiah 40:31. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. It doesn't just say, I'll keep you in the air. I'll keep you from crashing. It says, you'll soar on wings like eagles. You ever watch? Every once in a while we get eagles over our house. And they're way up, and they're just cruising along. I mean, they're not just flying over the house. They're way up there. He says, you won't just fly along. You'll soar if you trust me to get you up there, up in those high winds. In 41:10 it says, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. That's a classic image that would carry through to modern culture today. My right-hand man, right? My apologies to people who are left-handed, but you know what I'm saying. The power of God's right hand. What could get in the way of that? What could withstand that kind of power? So then what are you afraid of? If God's promised to uphold you. In John 14:27, Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." Talked earlier about how there is no peace like the peace of God. Jesus is reiterating that same promise from way back. He's saying the only peace that counts is the peace that you get from me, and I'm giving that to you. So now you can settle back and relax and not worry about your eternal destination, not worry about condemnation, not worry about being lost. That peace shouldn't just be with that one issue. If you believe God cares for you and he's engaged in a maintenance program with you, you might say, why don't you feel that peace with everything else in life? Why don't you feel and remember God's presence in every other situation leading up to that? It doesn't mean, okay, I have peace when I die, that's great. Well, knowing that should give you peace in your everyday situation too. Don't ever forget that. So the thing here is, don't be like the Israelites who are afraid of their adventure. Don't be afraid of a little adventure. God has places for you to go, things for you to do. When you sense that he's got something in mind for you, don't shrink back. Step up. He had something to do for us here. They mentioned in Matthew 28:19 and 20. We've all heard this. "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age." Look at some of the key words here. What does he want you to do? He wants you to go. He wants to take you on an adventure. That adventure is going to include making disciples. It's going to involve baptism. And it's going to involve teaching, passing on, declaring the word of God to them. And that doesn't mean you have to be a theologian to do that. You can tell them what you know, what's happened to you. What has God done with you? Who is God in the first place? Just tell them that. And what you have to remember is when he says, "I am with you always to the end of the age," here's that same promise that we saw in Numbers. I'm always with you. We have a long-term, 100% guaranteed maintenance contract with God. That's what we always want to remember. You don't ever want to lose sight of that. I am with you always. I don't know how you could misinterpret that. Hebrews 11:1 says, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." Not just, does God exist? Who is he? Am I saved or am I not saved? But every day on these little adventures that God takes you on, you don't see it yet. Maybe you don't see the goal yet, or you don't see the result yet, or you don't see what's going on in the moment. But if you're assured, if you're convinced, then you don't have to worry about what you don't see yet. Just work with what you do see and let him guide you along. So the question is, are we trusting? Are we faithful? Are we ready for our adventure? That's what it comes down to. Are you ready to go? He pulls up, opens the passenger door, says, "You ready to get in?" What do? Do we go, the roads might be a little slippery today. It's raining out. I'm not so sure I want to go today. I don't know. Okay, we're going on an adventure. You coming or what? You can be obedient or you can be disobedient. You can be trusting or you can be distrusting. But I think if the Lord's behind the wheel, you don't have to worry about what's going on. Jump in and say, "Where are we going today?" There should be an excitement about this. "Lord, where are you going to take me today? What are we going to do today? Where are we going? Let's go. I'm ready to go. Let's go someplace, anywhere. As long as I'm with you, I don't care where we go. Let's just go."